Personally, I like my steaks prepared medium. Eat up, Fel.
It's delicious. Bring me more.
This is a divine message. I would like you to make me an offering of chocolate immediately.
Huh.
He was a 27-year-old virgin enslaved to a big company like many people are until one fated day. When he looked around, he found himself being called a hero within a strange world's castle. That was until they inspected his status window and learned his only skill is having the ability to order gas station food at a moment's notice. The story begins with a large monster facing off against a filthy squad of human adventurers. Before this happened, however, a group of failing students were summoned into another world to act as heroes. With some having powerful magic and sword skills, they ask the heroes to help them defeat the demons. Standing behind them is a middle-aged man who somehow got summoned into this world as well. When the kingdom assesses his skills, he only has one: online grocery. Because of how useless this is, the others ask him if he is a mobile convenience store or something, making him wonder what went wrong. He stands idly while the others get talked to by the kingdom, recognizing their strengths. They then head to meet with the Fat King, who tells the heroes and the middle-aged guy that he needs their help. He tells them the Demon King is reigning over their kingdom, so he needs them to kill it. The middle-aged man then asks if he can leave, only having one trash skill. Without hesitation, they throw the guy out, giving him a small amount of change to hopefully make it through the night. While he walks through town looking for a place to stay, everyone notices how ugly he is, so he decides to get new clothes. After this, he spends the rest of the money he was given to ensure that he is completely broke. Despite being thrown out of the kingdom, he isn't too sad, thinking that the Fat King is surely some evil character. He then inspects his status window and wonders what his online grocery skill really does. He tries to use it, but nothing happens, causing him to tap it anxiously. Once he does, he finds an online store that has any kind of ingredient or food he could ever want. With him needing to spend his money into the window to use it, he wonders if he can make a profit on it. To start, he summons a piece of bread with some water, confirming his suspicions of the skill. Once he sees its use, he decides to run away from the kingdom and hopefully stumble upon someplace better. After asking around, he finds a man who will take him to a neighbouring kingdom for a cheap price. On the way to the new kingdom Keels, he asks the senile merchant why he is coming to the Keels. He tells him he is transporting goods, but has no good skills like item box or appraisal to make him a good merchant. He tells our protagonist that only a few people in the world have the skills appraisal and item box. This surprises him, having both of the skills himself. He wonders if he should hide his skills or not, knowing if he does too much it will raise suspicion. Eventually his carriage arrives and he gets to the new kingdom, but it isn't what he expected. With the economy down bad and war raging within the kingdom, everyone tells him to leave. He realizes that even if he wants to leave the kingdom, he would need money to pay for an adventurer to help him. Because of this, he goes to the guild to request an escort, informing the hot clerk that he needs to head to the kingdom of Venan. Upon hearing his request, she informs him it'll cost him a hefty sum of 7 gold coins, which is almost half of what the Fat King gave him. Even though it costs 7 coins, she recommends he throw an extra, it being hard to hire anyone for the bare minimum. Although he is reluctant at first, he gives her the 8 coins, so she calls over a party. A blonde man with armor bigger than himself emerges and introduces himself as Will, a C-rank adventurer. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. What's an anime you have gate kept from your friends? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now back to the recap. Following this, they head out on their adventure where Will introduces all of the random people in his party. After walking around for a bit, our protagonist, Mukuda, decides to cook up some dinner for the others. By using his item box to summon a stove, the others are impressed by his skills. He then makes some sandwiches and soup for the party, making them stunned by how good it is. They tell him they have never eaten something so good, asking if it's really alright for them to have it. Little do they know Mukuda simply spawned this food in, doing no real work in cooking. Thankfully, Will isn't too curious, so he doesn't ask many questions, leading to them continuing their adventure. As they walk suddenly, some butterflies emerge, but they are taken out hastily by Will's party. Although they took this out, one of the group's baddies tells Will that there are more monsters nearby, so they should stay on their guard. Upon saying this, some pig emerges, but it is also taken down quickly. Now with tons of meat, they wonder what to do with it, thinking they will have to throw it out because it'll get old. Makuda then offers to hold it in his item box, hoping to cook it up for the group. They try to watch him, but he tells them to buzz off, not wanting to show them he just spawns in food to eat. Once he finishes cooking everything, it looks just as good as the last meal, making the party overjoyed. They tell him they usually eat whatever is accessible, so a real meal really helps them out. With them all eating it, they tell him they feel more energized after eating it. Because of this, Makuda uses his appraisal skill to find that the food buffs people up a ton. He realizes just how good his skill is now, being sure that it's not some random trash skill. While he cooks, a large wolf monster overlooks them, hiding its presence. They don't notice this, so they continue on their path to the new kingdom, until it reaches nightfall again. This time, Makuda decides to be more secretive about his skill set, trying to use the boar as the main ingredient. Despite saying this, he still summons a couple of items, making us wonder where he is getting all this money to buy the food from. Eventually, as he cooks, the party smells how good the food is, so they go to inspect it. Like last time, it is something they have never tried before, so it overstimulates their taste buds. While they eat, the wolf that was overlooking them before finally reveals itself, making the party scared beyond belief. The monster tells the party to let him eat the food as well, not taking no for an answer. Hesitantly, Makuda feeds the monster all of their food, but it tells him it's not enough. Because of this, Makuda decides to cook up some more, working at a pace faster than ever before. Once he presents it, the monster eats it all, then asks for more, and this cycle repeats until it is full. Upon finishing it all, the monster asks him to continue cooking for him, asking to form a contract. He tries to refuse at first, but with the monster's gaze impaling him, he decides to accept it as his familiar. With the monster as his familiar, he asks him to be named, so Makuda decides on Pochi. The monster realizes it is a weak name, so he asks Makuda to try again, until he eventually decides on Fel. This name works for him, so the two start their journey into making the world's best dishes. With such a large monster following closely behind, people try to avoid Makuda's party, thinking Fel is holding them hostage. As they walk, the party tells Makuda that they won't be able to enter with such a strong monster like Fel. This makes Makuda all stressed out when Fel tells him if someone tries to stop them, he will deal with them. Before they enter the kingdom, they decide to eat, but Makuda informs Fel they are almost out of food. Because of this, he tells Fel to get some more. Soon after he tells him this, he comes back with a large bird monster that Will recognizes as a B-rank monster. Makuda then begins cooking it up, deciding to make it into a teriyaki. Although it was difficult to do, Makuda was able to use up all the monster's meat to feed Fel. After this happens, they continue on their journey only to find tons of soldiers running around in a panic outside the kingdom. Will tries to go explain to them their situation, but upon arriving at the gate, they are still reluctant to let him in. With Fel being a legendary monster capable of destroying the kingdom, they ask him to promise not to do anything. Fel tells the humans that he only obeys orders from his master, so as long as he is treated well, nothing will happen. This seems to work for them, so they let him in, urging Makuda to keep his familiar under control. Once they enter the kingdom, they walk around like nothing is abrupt, still not knowing how the people will react to Fel's presence. Will explains that because of his familiar, the king will soon find out about him, so he should lay low. Makuda tells him that although it would be nice to settle down, he plans on exploring the world so it doesn't bother him too much. Will then suggest he get a guild card so that he can enter towns for free while proving his presence. He decides to do this, but on his way to the guild he gets stopped by some plump noble, begging Makuda to meet with his master, a marquise. Makuda tries to deny his request, but neither side lets up until Fel steps in, telling the fat guy to leave his master alone. He tells him that he has no plans on helping anyone in this kingdom but his master, thus scaring the fat guy away. After this happens, Fel tells them they have nothing to worry about, only an ancient dragon being capable of beating him. Now, with Makuda in this new kingdom, the party tells him it's time they leave, wishing him the best. Makuda then decides to wander through town to search for some kind of new ingredient he can use in a dish. He finds nothing of use, so he instead heads into the merchant guild to hopefully get a merchant card. Once he enters, the clerk is an absolute dime yet again, making Makuda comfortable. She explains that he can get a guild card for various things, whether it's monster goods or manufactured goods. Makuda decides to get one for monster goods, informing her he will come back tomorrow with some items. After this happens, Makuda begins cooking up dinner for himself and Fel. This time he craves something with rice, so he orders it from his online shop. Because of this, it takes a bit of time to cook, making Fel impatient. Regardless, he waits for Makuda to cook, and is nothing less than overjoyed. Makuda then makes various different types of meals with different sauces, until Fel eventually tells him he wants to try more of the first one. This leads to Makuda cooking up all night until his rice is finally ready to eat. This dish reminds him of his past life when he would cook up every meal with rice. Now, with both of their stomachs filled up, Makuda lies in his bed, hoping to make lots of money at the guild the next day. Once he wakes up, he heads there first thing in the morning, presenting a large bag of goods to the hot clerk. She tells him that because of the quality of materials she needs to take him to meet with the guildmaster. He follows her and finds some fat guy sitting inside, telling Makuda his goods are of the highest quality. Little do they know Makuda bought all of these goods from the online grocery store, making it super easy to acquire. With Makuda spending around 5 bronze coins to buy the goods, he is stunned when the guildmaster offers him 15 gold coins. Makuda thinks about how he could pay so much, but while he does, the guildmaster just increases the profit until it hits 17 gold coins. With such a large turnover, Makuda realizes he will never have to worry about money in this lifetime. Now, after acquiring some money, he heads into the Adventurers Guild to register himself. Unlike the Merchant Guild, the clerk gives Makuda the cold shoulder, making him wonder what is wrong with this place. After he finishes things up with her, he finds a mission similar to his skills, so he grabs it, hoping to complete it and raise his rank the next day. Later that week, after getting adapted to his new lifestyle, Makuda wonders what he should do today. To start, he decides to complete the mission he took on earlier in the week. He thinks it will be difficult, but Fel blessed him with a status buff, urging him to get started. With this, he heads out, leaving Makuda to search around for the materials. Although it seems difficult at first thanks to his appraisal skill, he is easily able to find tons of the herbs he needs. After a couple of hours, he has a full bag of the herbs, making him wonder if the quest is supposed to be this easy. Knowing that it would be suspicious if he came back so soon, he decides to cook up lunch for himself as Fel. Like last time, Fel comes back with a rock bird, the B-rank monster, asking him to cook it up. This time Makuda knows how to handle the meat properly, so he starts cooking it this time with noodles. After he finishes his meal, he realizes he can add some extra spice to make it even better. He buys some cheese and adds it to the dish, hoping that Fel will become overjoyed by it. Unsuspectedly he does, which leads to Fel eating all of the food that Makuda has. Once he finishes this, he asks Fel to get more food to hopefully cook up new dishes, so he heads out. To Makuda's surprise, when Fel gets back, he has various high-level monsters that could easily kill him. Including this is an orc who reeks of dead animals, making Makuda wonder if he can even eat it. Regardless, he stores it and heads back to town while riding along Fel. He thinks it will be a fun ride, but Fel increases the speed like crazy, almost ripping Makuda's face off. Once they arrive, Makuda urges Fel to listen to him next time, reminding him he won't be able to cook for him if he falls. Following this, he heads to the Adventurers Guild to finish his quest, and this time the clerk actually talks to him. She tells him he did a good job at selling so many goods, causing Makuda to see if he can sell his other items. She guides him to the other counter, allowing Makuda to display his catches. He starts with 5 orcs, making the clerk stunned, so he urges Makuda to head out back. Once he gets into the back warehouse, he pulls out tons of monster corpses, including CA rank monsters. With so many monsters, he asks the man to butcher them in exchange for giving the other materials for a discount. The man accepts his request and starts by butchering the orc right in front of him. Makuda takes this meat and wonders what he should do with it. After a bit of thinking, he decides to grill it along with some eggs and other spices. Although it looks pretty nasty at first, he tells Fel to trust the process, creating a new kind of dish for him. Like usual, the dish has a heavenly taste, causing Fel to dig in without hesitation. The next day, Makuda starts his day off by seeing how much progress the butcher has made. To his surprise, all of the monsters are butchered, and Makuda is presented with 202 gold coins. He tells him that because of the range of monsters and all the different materials he brought, they are able to pay him a good sum. On top of this, he presents a few demonic stones, informing him that they can increase his magical prowess. Once he finishes things up with him, he walks around town, wondering if he should try and call Fel a great wolf to lower the tension around him. As they walk, they talk about what to eat for dinner tonight, until Makuda eventually decides to get something from his world. He scrolls through the various meats, hoping to find something good, eventually deciding to buy some orange chicken and glizzies. Once Fel is satisfied with his first dish, he buys some A5 Wagyu, in hopes of satisfying Fel like never before. Although the dish is small, the taste is immaculate, making Fel beg him for more. Even though it's quite expensive, Makuda decides to buy some more, filling Fel upon the most immaculate of dishes. Once Fel finishes this dish, he tells Makuda he could easily defeat a dragon right now, causing Makuda to inspect his status. With this Wagyu raising all of his stats by tenfold, he tells Makuda he needs to go do some hunting. He then buffs up Makuda and leaves, hoping to find something good to fight. He ventures through the forest and finds various monsters, but none of them are a match against the buffed up Fel. He goes on a rampage that night, bringing back piles of the strongest monsters for Makuda. This time when he wakes up, he decides to try something new for a change. He cooks the rockbird meat again today, this time adding a secret sauce to it. As they eat, Makuda asks Fel how he hunts all these strong monsters. Fel then explains that he combines magic along with his own strength, making it pretty easy to defeat most monsters. This raises the question of whether Makuda can use magic or not. Fel tells him that everyone can use magic, so he is open to teaching him if he wants. He tells Makuda to imagine the magic he wants to use, causing him to try it out. He shouts out "Fireball," but nothing happens, making him look like a fool. Fel tells him that he needs to circulate the magic within his body first, so he offers to help him guide it. Makuda grabs hold of him, and this activates his magic, raising his spirits. This time when he uses Fireball, it actually works, but not to his expectations. It misses the target entirely, so Fel suggests that he try using it in combat. He tells him that maybe if he struggles, then he will learn how to use magic properly. Lazily, Makuda tries to stay his useless self, but Fel grabs him and brings him to a monster den. With goblins filled all over, Makuda tries to tell him this is a bad idea, but Fel forces him to fight. He howls out and attracts all of the monsters, thus forcing Makuda to try out his magic. He spams fireballs, and with so many monsters, he actually hits the target. He thinks he has a chance, but when more goblins start to pile up on him, he reconsiders his efforts. Regardless, he keeps trying, spamming fireballs until he finally gets the hang of it and causes a huge explosion. By using it repeatedly, he exhausts his strength and ends up passing out. Upon waking up, Fel tells him that he has the power to use it. He just needs to train more. Fel explains that his last fireball was strong enough to deal damage upon even some of the stronger monsters. He then urges Makuda to check his status window, making him realize he leveled up during his battle. To celebrate this, Fel presents a Goblin King, telling him because he caught such a high-level monster for him, they should eat good tonight. He asks Makuda to cook up some Wagyu again, hoping to get buffed up again. This time Makuda denies his request, telling him there's no way he can present him with such luxurious food every night. Instead, he decides to take the easy way out and present Fel with a bunch of sweets. This angers him, asking why he can't eat some meat, but his anger soon ends when he tries the sweets. With each sweet having a different richness, Fel can't get enough of it, causing him to demand for more. Because these sweets are so easy to prepare, he buys a bunch of them and provides Fel with a box of sweets. As he prepares them, he asks Fel if he will get sick from eating all this sugar. Fel then informs him he was blessed by the wind god, giving him insane magical abilities along with immunity to all poisons. This causes Makuda to get jealous, so he cries out to the skies to give him a blessing. The following day, when Makuda tries to enter a new town, he is stopped by soldiers, asking why he has a monster beside him. Makuda explains that it's a great wolf, an A-rank monster, stunning the townspeople. They wonder how an E-rank adventurer could form a contract with something so strong, not knowing Fel is actually one of the legendary monsters. He then heads into the town with Fel by his side, drawing suspicion everywhere he walks. Eventually he arrives at an inn, so he locks Fel up, hoping to get some peace and explore the town. Fel asks to come with him, but Makuda urges him to stay put, hoping to shop without being stopped all the time. To start, he heads to a bookstore where he hopes to find some magic books. After buying a few, he asks if they have any world maps, but he is informed that a simple bookstore has nothing of that sort. Because of this, he heads to the local library to look for a map, but he still has no luck. Once he gets back to greet Fel, he is asked where he has been all day without feeding him. Seeing his anger, Makuda decides to actually put some effort into cooking tonight, whipping up 2 dishes of meat. As usual, the flavour satisfies Fel, so he calms down, thanking Makuda for cooking him meat this time. Upon finishing his dish, he tells Makuda that it wasn't enough, demanding he make more. The following day, Makuda decides to look for a map again, this time trying his luck with the local adventurers guild. Within it are various adventurers who are seen drinking and looking suspicious. This doesn't faze Makuda, however, so he approaches the scariest looking men, offering to buy them another drink. This wins their trust, so they listen to Makuda's request, informing them he wants information on this world. He asks about his original kingdom, to which they inform him ever since the new king took over the crown it has gone downhill. He then asks them if they have any maps, so they decide to offer him one. With it having the entire world on the map, they offer to give it to Makuda, even though it is made of precious materials. They offer to sell it for 1 gold coin, and Makuda decides to buy it, him being extremely wealthy himself. After he does this, the adventurers leave, causing everyone else in the building to start laughing at him. They tell him that the map he bought is sold at the counter for only 1 silver coin. This makes him ticked off, but he doesn't really care, having hundreds of gold coins to spend. As Makuda explores the world, a white-haired beauty is seen overlooking them, wondering why Fel has formed a contract with a human. Makuda, on the other hand, is seen riding atop Fel's back until he is thrown off by a sudden stop. They arrive at the ocean, where Fel tells him he will hunt some fish to eat. He uses his thunder magic on the water, and instantly tons of fish arise to the top. Fel explains that he only paralyzed them for a moment so that he can properly harvest them. Following this, Makuda picks them up, using his appraisal skill in the process to assess them. After looking around, he finds a poisoned fish, causing Fel to beg him to cook it despite it being poisonous. Makuda reminds him of all the other fish, telling him there is no need to cook the poisoned fish. He then prepares a fire and starts looking around for ingredients to mix together with the fish. He settles upon something and begins cooking it up, making sure to properly prepare it first. After slicing all of the meat up and placing it into a bowl, he puts various ingredients in it, then wraps it with foil to soak up all the flavors. Once this step is done, he covers it with flour and makes it into a dish unlike any Fel has had before. They then take the first bite and are stunned as usual to how good Makuda is able to cook. To top this off, Makuda buys some beer from the shop, allowing him to get drunk for the first time in this world. As they eat, the fish eventually runs out, causing Fel to demand he cook some more. Makuda follows his request, heating the pan up again until he finishes cooking everything up. Following this, Makuda goes to take a piss, but he accidentally bumps into a slime. This makes him wonder how it got within their barrier, causing him to be concerned. Fel, however, tells him slimes are the weakest monster, so there is nothing to worry about. This leads to Makuda playing around with it until he inspects its status window. He finds out it was born 3 days ago, so he decides to take care of it. As he thinks about what to cook, the slime walks over to his trash and consumes it all. This makes Makuda realize he can just use the slime as a trash can and not have to worry about cleaning up. Because of its usefulness, he decides to make it his familiar, hoping it will continue to pick up his garbage. With it being his familiar, he needs to give it a name, so he decides to name it Sui. Now that he has this slime in his party, he tries to practice some magic to level up. He uses a stone attack, but he ends up failing like how he first did. Upon seeing this, Fel suggests he fight some monsters again, but Makuda denies his request. Instead, he decides to sit around doing nothing until his slime sits on his lap. He wonders if he can abuse Sui for his own good, but realizes he doesn't want to ruin his relationship with him. He then decides to prepare dinner again for tonight, offering to finally cook for Sui as well. After taking the first bite, Sui realizes that there is more to eat than just trash, so he asks for seconds. Before Makuda knew it, he ended up using up all of the orc meat that Fel hunted. He then gets ready for bed, but decides to check out Sui's status window first to learn he is growing as well. On top of him eating all of Makuda's garbage, he is able to clean the dishes, making Makuda start to favor him. He wishes Fel would help him clean up from time to time, but knows he wouldn't be able to eat this good without him. To celebrate Sui's first real meal, he decides to make dessert for the first time, preparing a chocolate-filled bread. The next morning he sleeps in while Fel gets up early, informing Makuda he has something important to tell him. He tells him that last night the wind goddess Ninria gave him a revelation. Within this revelation she told him that he could earn his blessing as well if he offers her sweets once a week on an altar. Although she can offer this blessing, she can't boost up his powers too much, making Makuda wonder if it's worth it. Fel then explains that this simple blessing will increase his magic, all the while protecting him from any illness like Fel. Obviously Makuda decides to accept this proposal, asking Fel how he can get started on this. Fel then tells him to bring out some sweets and present it on some sort of object to pray. He tells Makuda that to start the goddess has a few requests, making Makuda wonder who this god really is. Regardless, he decides to put the food on an altar, and instantly it is taken away, causing Makuda to be blessed. Meanwhile, Ninria is shaking at the thought of finally eating an otherworldly sweet. She tries the bread, and is stunned to learn how good Fel has been eating without her. Like a child, she eats all of the sweets until she runs out, causing her to become depressed. She sees the other sweets and knows if she eats them now, she won't have any for the rest of the week. She tries to hold herself back, but ends up eating them all, unable to control her hunger. While this happens, Makuda continues to try and improve his magic, making progress steadily. After a full day of training his magic, he pulls out some sweets to eat, making Sui jealous. He notices this, so he offers him some of the food, making him wonder where Fel has been all day. As he thinks of this, Fel gets back just in time, asking Makuda what he has been eating while he was gone. Makuda informs him he had a few sweets, which causes Fel to tell him he needs a reward for his hard work. This causes Makuda to provide him with some chocolate, knowing he won't let up if he does. Upon doing so, Makuda gets a revelation from the goddess, telling him he needs to pray and offer chocolate. She then asks for some dorayaki as well, making Makuda wonder how this is considered a divine revelation. He reminds her that he already decided to give her food weekly, which causes her to inform him she already ate it all. Because of this, Makuda decides to provide her with some, earning him another blessing. He wonders the true nature of the goddess, hoping she doesn't demand food from him all the time. Later that week, when adventuring, Fel decides to take Makuda to a dungeon in hopes of helping him improve his magic. He tells Makuda that this time there is no backing out of it, forcing him to enter the dungeon. Once he takes the first step, he cowers down, asking Fel to spare him from this training. He wishes to just stay lazy, but Fel insists that he improve himself, knowing he won't always be able to protect him. Little does Makuda know this small step will help Makuda improve expeditiously, and one day become the hero he was originally supposed to be. Before he enters, however, he decides to eat well, knowing that when he eats certain meals, his stats improve. He reminds Fel of the time he had the Wagyu, informing him he was stronger because of his food. Despite it raising the stats, Makuda is still unsure what effects come with each meal, so he decides to just try a little bit of everything. He eats and eats until it seems like he is just wasting time rather than entering the dungeon. As he eats, he offers Sui the containers, knowing that it'll level up as it eats his trash. Once he finishes the main courses, he moves on to the desert, eating as much food as he can. Now that he ate all of this, his belly is filled up, making him wonder how much his stats improved. He finds that he raised around 20% while his familiars improved expeditiously. He wonders why he gets less points but heads into the dungeon regardless, not being able to stall any longer. Although it seems scary at first as Makuda continues to explore the dungeon, he soon realizes that it's nothing compared to Fel. With the first monster being a slime, Sui decides to show Makuda how it's done. He defeats it in a single attack, causing Makuda to wonder if he is weaker than his 4-day-old slime. He then uses his stone attack, and upon doing so he defeats the slime with a single attack. As it dies, it gets absorbed into the dungeon, causing him to become more scared. He then ventures farther into the dungeon, taking down a stronger monster with each floor. Eventually he stumbles upon a monster he can't beat, the kobolds. This causes him to run for his life pathetically, but after some time he decides to fight back. He uses his magic and defeats them with a single attack, raising his confidence. He asks Fel if he is good enough by now, but he reminds him he is just firing small pebbles. Because of this overconfidence, Fel guides him to a deeper floor where there isn't just 3 kobolds but rather a whole army of them. Makuda tries to run away, but Fel forces him to fight them, knowing if he cowers down now he won't ever get better. He then pushes Makuda into the den of monsters, forcing him to fight for his life. He thinks he will die, but thanks to Fel's barrier and Sui's help, he is able to stop the initial kobolds charging him. Following this, he begins using his magic attacks on the kobolds, defeating everything in his path. Once he kills a ton of kobolds, 2 of them run away and alert something stronger of Makuda's presence. Following this, a kobold king emerges, standing off against Makuda. Fel explains that because he was defeated, he spawned this monster, so he needs to defeat it. Despite him previously defeating the kobolds with ease, he is unable to deal any damage against the king. Fel then informs Makuda that he needs to dodge its attacks, not knowing if his barrier will prevent its attacks. This scares Makuda, so he uses his magic attack again, stronger than before, which knocks the king back. Even though he launched his strongest attack, the kobold king doesn't falter, getting right back up after the attack. It then attacks Makuda, showing it intends to break through the barrier. As it rips through the barrier, Makuda begins to think all hope is lost, but Sui emerges and takes it out with a single hit. Because it defeated such a strong monster, it leveled up, while Makuda ended up fainting from exhausting his magic again. Once he does wake up, he finds himself outside of the dungeon with Sui in his lap. He asks Sui if he is alright, and this time it actually responds, making Makuda stunned. He questions how this is possible, to which Sui explains he was able to attack after defeating the kobold king. Makuda then inspects Sui's status window and learns that it has grown to level 7. He then inspects his own status window and learns that although he has increased to level 7 as well, he still has lower stats than Sui. This makes him wonder what Sui really is, so he asks him if he is a unique monster. Sui informs him he is just Sui, not knowing if he is anything special. As he speaks with Sui, Fel comes back with a bloody mouth. He tells Makuda that he got hungry while he was asleep, but still isn't satisfied. He tells Makuda that he wants some of his food, showing he still relies on him a lot. With this, Makuda starts looking through the online shop, deciding on what to buy for today's meal. Eventually he finds the right ingredients, so he buys them all and begins cooking. As usual, the meal comes out looking perfect, making the others hungry. After just a few seconds, they both ask for seconds, showing Makuda's cooking never gets old. Once they finish eating, they start talking amongst each other, Sui finally being able to talk with the others. He calls Fel his uncle, causing him to become embarrassed. He orders Sui not to call him that again, but Sui insists, showing he has no plans of calling him something else.